Hey, I'm in Panajachel, Guatemala, Lake Atalan, Guatemala, and I'm going to Colombia. I'm a tribe of one. I'm Andy Lee Graham, and I'm having trouble with this camera being straight. The table's crooked. Okay, the a tribe of one, and Henry David Thoreau was a tribe of one. The more I study Thoreau, the reason why I don't know why he's my hero, okay? And I really, will say that he's my hero, and I'm not always sure why, okay? It's definitely not because he went to Walden Pond and built a cabin. I could have done that with my eyes closed. It was because he was willing to leave and become an independent person, a tribe of one. But I'm going to read, I wrote a chapter today, Thoreau, A Tribe of One. And it starts out to be set up, sorted, ready to walk. When I first took up my abode in the woods, that is, began to spend my nights as well as my days there, which by accident was on Independence Day, 4th of July, 1845. My house was not finished for winter. Henry David Thoreau, Chapter 2, What I Lived For. Okay, Thoreau was 27 years old and 11 months of age, moved from the safety of his family and mentor, Ralph Waldo Emerson, to Walden Pond. It was 1.6 miles, roughly 20 to 30 minutes walk from the center of Concord. Really, he didn't go very far, but this is really a different age, a different time, a different world, where there was no electricity, no cars. This is 1845, and so in a way he became a subsistence farmer for 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days. And I don't believe by chance that he actually went there by accident on July 4th. I think it was a writer's rhetorical thing. Okay, but I, Andy Lee Graham, left the safety of the USA in March of 1994. I left the USA. I started living in hotel rooms. The first hotel was in Pia de la Cuesta, Mexico, 8 miles north of Acapulco. I was 42 years old and 5 months old at the time. I was 42 when I started traveling. I am now 65 plus, and I'm going to keep the actual age a secret because it doesn't. The world is not it's kind of a mean place. Okay, a tribe of one. I became a tribe of one, and he became a tribe. And I'm going to explain what that means. Tribe of one, and the name of my book is Andy's Tribe of One, 25 years as a tribe of one. I forget the name of the book, but it's in 125 plus years for 100 plus countries. Please, my readers, there is an insane notion, a belief that when we leave, separate, or walk away from our friends, family, work, and other relationships, we are to never look back. This is crazy. To never look back. When you separate, you should never look back. It's believed that we're leaving in anger, and there's thousands of people that have left and became a tribe of one outside the United States, inside the United States. Some people brag about going to the mountains and live. In that movie, Into the Wild, he goes and lives in Alaska and dies. This is not the goal, okay? Most of the people are very confused, and they lost the plot. I didn't lose the plot, neither did Henry David Thoreau, but many of us are somehow living a life that is vicariously lived by others, and they think that we're leaving the United States because we're angry. I didn't leave the United States because I was angry. I left the United States because it was an opportunity. Okay. Many, they want you to never look back and never return. We leave separate or walk away from friends, family, work, and other relationships. We are never to look back and return to visit. This is crazy. We are leaving. They even hate their life. At best, I can surmise, people transfer their feelings of anger at their lives to Henry David Thoreau. And this is one reason I think people love Henry David Thoreau, is he's a fantasy. They don't believe they're ever going to go live in the wood. woods, but they can have him as their hero, as a fantasy, and not a reality. And this is the difference between a philosopher and a person that talks about philosophy. Henry David Thoreau was a philosopher. Uh, they're feeling an they're talking about Thoreau as if they're a cheerleader about Thoreau. Way to go, Thoreau! You left your family and friends. You understand that's a little insane? Never a shortage of noise outside the United States. Okay, one of the great values of the United States is the right to the pursuit of happiness, which means that you can't always go and interrupt anybody else's life. It's really a part of a culture that the United States is really a great thing. The rest of the world doesn't quite believe that way. They believe that if they want to talk, it's okay to interfere with another person's life. Okay, for me, when I return home to Orland, Indiana, or Fort Wayne, Indiana, people in a blink of an anger want to say, Andy, you quit traveling. It's amazing. If I come home, even my mom or family act like I'm coming home for good. They can't. It's like a binary way of thinking. You're either there or you're not. You can't be just visiting. Okay, you can go work in another place, but you can't just go live in another place. Understand? That's kind of like sacrilegious to actually go and live in a different place because of a different quality of life. Okay, but when I talk to anybody about Thoreau, they want to bring up the fact that he was only like 1.6 miles away from home, and he went back to his family and ate pie, and he went to visit all his friends in Concord. Somehow they demand that he did have a chapter on solitude, which is and nature, and everybody that thinks about nature as a separate world. Nature is just a different. It's like a hobby for Thoreau. Thoreau is in love with nature, and he was in love with being himself, a tribe of one. I'm in love with being myself. I didn't leave the United States. I don't have any anger at my family and friends or whatever. I do have a little bit of resentment that they always treat me as if I'm doing something wrong. But that was the genius of Henry David Thoreau. He didn't feel any remorse that he was doing something. He actually, more or less the same as me, I feel pity for the people inside the United States. Why? They've worked, while I've been traveling the world for 25 years, working about 1 day a week or 2 hours a day, they've been working. And they think because they have the things and the stuff and the money, that somehow they have a better life. It's the comfort of society that is the trap. But there is this natural, this is natural. Okay. They want to bring up the fact that Henry David Thoreau left Walden Pond and went to eat with his family. And I think to myself, what's wrong with this? What is wrong with you guys? It's natural to go live with go eat with your family. But somehow, this little tweak of the brain is incapable. People are incapable of understanding that it's not an all or nothing thing. When you do anything in life, it's always a maybe. And people don't like maybes. Trust me. Maybes cause a lot of confusion for people. But I will venture to say that most people will not live in another place besides their family because they believe they cannot return home. The only excuse they can have is if they got a job. And that's the worst possible excuse to leave your family. By far. There is an instinctual fear, a primal fear that our moms and dad will leave. And this bias says, Mom, Dad, if you do leave, please don't return. And that's how, when you see a person, when you leave somebody, they get really angry. I've left the United States, and when I got angry, everybody was angry at me. And I was like, why are you angry at me? I'm not leaving you. I'm just going to a different place. But they feel emotionally that if you're not in the same area, you're not sharing the same place, you're leaving. But you can see from a mother-father point of view, this is real for people. I mean, when you're a little kid, if you get separated from your mother and father in the Walmart or something, it's very scary. And this trauma never leaves us for the rest of our life unless we can overcome it. We have to rise above it. And Henry David Thoreau rose above it, as did I. Um, we're not abandoning society. It's a tribe of one. But it was not the goal of Thoreau or I or anyone who lives a different life. It's a tribe of one. Living with a family or away from a family is not a divorce from family. One cannot truly divorce mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers. They are always part of a small tribe called a family. You don't get to leave your family. I see people in Lake Athlon and everywhere I go, these foreigners actually will not talk to any of their family. Pretty sad, okay? Because this is not a good reason to live abroad. Yes, it works, but it makes you the wanted, the unwanted, and the hermits. And this is, you're not the wanted by the United States, so you leave, the unwanted by the United States, so you leave, or you're a hermit where you just cannot do it. And a lot of people call Henry David Thoreau a hermit, and by far he wasn't a hermit. I'm by far not a hermit. Can we or I or you divorce the influence of family? The better question is, why would anyone be so angry at their family that they would refuse to interact or talk or to have family? It's a rather no-win situation. A person that will not talk to their children, their family, their friends, or whatever back at home, they have personal problems, okay? That is not the reason to travel. If you have personal problems, you should stay there and deal with them. Okay. It's a rather no-win. It's hard to say common sense can ever prevail. Common sense is very thing. People are not logical. They are very emotional. People making emotional decisions. I learned that when I sold real estate in the United States. It's always an emotional decision. It's very seldom irrational. Read from the please read from second chapter of Where I Lived and What I Lived For, Henry David Thoreau's chapter 2 on Walden. There are millions. The millions are awake enough for physical labor, but only 1 in a million is awake enough for effective intellectual exertion. Only 1 in 100 million is a poetic or divine life. To be awake is to be alive. I have never yet a man who is quite awake. How could I have looked him in the face? There are millions awake enough for physical labor. So there's millions of people that just can go do physical labor. Everybody can go get a job. 1 in a million is awake enough for effective intellectual exertion, to actually think. Only 1 in 100 million is a poetic or divine life. And here is where Henry David Thoreau is talking about why he went to the pond. He wanted to be the 1 in a million that was awake. Now, that doesn't mean just because you make a decision to be the 1 in a million, you're awake, okay? But I'm going to go on here and I'll explain. 1 in a million, 1 in 100 million. And what is a 1 in 100 million person? It's a tribe of one. I want you to listen. A person that's 1 in 100 million is a tribe of one. The name of the chapter is Where and What. Why does everybody ignore the obvious? Thoreau went to the woods to be the 1 in 100 million. The one who is awake and who has never met another awoke person and never did. He wrote a book explaining this person. But this is the job of a philosopher. What is the job of a philosopher? A job of a philosopher is to step aside, to step outside, to go to another realm, to live in a different ether world, in the ether. That's like the space it's a separate reality. But he wrote a book. That's what philosophers do. They write explaining the perfect life and the ideal life. That doesn't mean that they believe that everybody can live that life. The India sadhus, they're sadhus and these ascetic mendicant monks who renounce worldly life. This was Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi kept acting that the things of the world were not real, and they're not. Nothing we have, if we buy a car, a house, a trailer, we work at a job, none of this is real. What is real is the thoughts that we live in. We live in these world of thoughts, and we can make this world any way we want. This is what's interesting. Ralph Waldo Emerson had a quote, said, whoso would be a man must be a nonconformist. Then what does Thoreau do? He goes to the woods and becomes a nonconformist. Instead of talking about it like Emerson, he actually went and did it. And he lived a life instead of being under the scrutiny. See, as I understand Emerson, I don't really know that much about him, but it looks as though he spent all his time giving lectures and getting paid for these lectures, as if talking about being a philosopher is more important than think. And this is what I have a problem with philosophy. I was a philosophy major in university, Indiana University, Bloomington. And everybody wants to talk about philosophy, but they don't want to actually try to understand the act of being a philosopher. And I think Henry David Thoreau realized that 1 in 100 million can do this. Why? Because the anchor that keeps us attached to reality is houses, cars, any kind of material thing. But the sadhus in India are sort of like that. They roam around and they live off the alms of men. And in a way, the philosophers is a separate type of person that in a way is supported by society. Winston Churchill asked Winston Churchill in World War II one time what he was going to do, what he thought about art and all the things that they were losing. And he said, this is what we're working for. This is what we're fighting for. They didn't fight for the houses and the cars and the material possessions. We fought World War II to give back the freedom of thought, the freedom to be who you want to be. And that doesn't mean to be a person that tries to hurt the rest of the world. Henry David Thoreau did not hurt anybody, and I do not hurt anybody. Okay, but sometimes people believe that an opinion is hurting. That's a personal problem on your side. When I have an enemy, I know that I have spoken to them in an intimate way, that they now have to go into their little solitary confinement and say, I am guilty of what he was talking about. Emerson wrote about being a nonconformist, and Thoreau was one. There is a difference. He went and became one. What can a philosopher do, a poet, or others than to walk away from? We have no choice. A philosopher has no choice. A true philosopher must unhook from society because there's an influence. The further one walks away, the clearer one can think. The further one walks away, the clearer one can think, because the only way to think freely is outside the quicksand of living inside the experience of society. I'm going to say that again. This is my quote. The further one walks away, the clearer one can think, because the only way to think freely is to be outside the quicksand of living the experience of society. Society is like, it's a Charlie Foxtrot. It just constantly drags you in. Just when I thought, Michael Corleone, when he was leaving The Godfather, the movie, says, just when I thought I was out, they dragged me back in. This is society. Society has to be separate if you want to be a philosopher. You have to be a tribe of one. That does not mean that you can't intersect. I always laugh when I went to Peru, and I was trying to visit uncontacted tribes. And everybody wants to act literal, okay? The uncontracted tribes, it's not that they don't know of the other tribes. It's just that they don't want to have contact. They want to live separate. And the reason why they're uncontacted is really easy. They live up in the mountains, up the river so far that they have no reason to come down. It's like living up in the hills in Kentucky or something. But the quicksand of living inside the experience of society is quicksand. The more you move, the more you're trapped. The more you're trapped, the more you cannot move in society without having the influence. So the only way to step outside is to become a tribe of one. Gandhi, Thoreau, Martin Luther King, Benjamin Franklin, Elon Musk are stepping to a different drummer. You understand that they got so many enemies by what? What do? They tell the truth. This infuriates society when a person is capable of living without the other. When you leave society says come back. They will ostracize anybody that can think freely, that has freedom of speech, that believes that it's an inalienable right, self-evident that we have a right to the freedom of speech. What are they doing right now? The big trendy thing is that we cancel people for talking. Amazing. They want to cancel one of the smartest people on the planet, Jordan Peterson, because he has an opinion on IQs. You have the inalienable, self-evident right, according to the Constitution of the United States, the freedom, the pursuit of happiness, to have an opinion different than somebody. And if you won't allow somebody to think differently than you, you are really a macho control freak. Okay, if a person says their piece, it's like desiderata. You hang on those walls. Go placidly amid the noise and the haste. You have to say your piece quietly. When a person rants, they're not sure what they're doing. Ranting is a sure sign that a person has emotional problems. But talking slowly, explaining your truth with a happy face. I always believe that if a person isn't happy when they're explaining something, they're trying to be controlling, because anger is controlling. When a person realizes they have no choice, they are not part of society, maybe the 1 in 100 million, they do not leave. They just find a safe place where they can have outside the influence. And that's what I would strive to get people to realize. I would love if people realize you're not under the gun of society. Nobody is forcing you to make a decision. You have agreed to obey, and when you get angry, it's not their fault they tried to keep you in society. It's not their fault that people try to get you to obey their rules. It's your fault that you obeyed the rules. And I'll never forget Jim Seltzer sliding a piece of paper across the table in Fort Wayne, Indiana at this kind of business meeting. They said, Andy, women will always be angry with you. You are uncontrollable. And I'm going to give that reason, that responsibility for my uncontrollability to Henry David Thoreau when I was age 15. I thought he was 100% correct. I internalized it, and I went and lived a life that's special. I went to university not to make money. I went to university to become a philosophy major. I wanted to teach at a professor, but after I got to university, I realized that all the professors were insane. Okay, they were talking about an unrealistic world. I remember this philosophy teacher thinking that we were going to have an overturn of the government. I said, guy, you're living in the book, you're not living in reality. And this is the empirical problem. They're so far into the books that they can't see the reality of life. And they don't have any touch with reality. And Henry David said, go for a walk and explore the world. It's so simple. And when was the last time you heard of a professor just saying, I'm going to go walk and I'm going to live like the normal people do. They have zero desire to live like the normal people do. That is the problem with the anointed. Thomas Sowell's really got his finger on this. Thoreau was a philosopher. He wasn't being rebellious. He was searching for the truth, the essentials of life. To listen to the story of life is only possible when you close the door to the story of another life. You can't really live two life. And he says his sojourn was a temporary time on thing. And people get so like he had to go into live on Walden Pond for the rest of his life. I go anywhere I want. I've lived as a tribe of one for 25 years. Here's a quote: care about what other people think and you will always be their prisoner. Care about other people. The only way to not care about what people think is to go outside, to rise above, to live outside their grasp. That's the only way. Because otherwise, we're always influenced. Nobody is capable of ignoring all the voices that they hear in the background. Okay, this is a great one I heard on Tom Bailu talking to Tony Robinson. The reason man adapts himself to the world, the reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists trying to adapt the world to himself. Okay, the reasonable man just changes and adapts to the world. The unreasonable man tries to get the world to adapt to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. George Bernard Shaw. The unreasonable man says, no, this is the way it should be. This is the ideal world. This is Henry David Thoreau. He had a tribe of one. He says, this is the world that I want. And he made the world in his mind, and he created a world, and we can do this. We can absolutely create a world that is separate from the rest of the world. We can live in the middle of chaos. Jeff Gilmore in Fort Wayne, Indiana used to say anybody can be a saint up on top of a mountain looking down, but it takes a real serenity and clarity and understanding to be at peace and a saint inside chaos. And this is where some ways I think the mislaid understanding of Thoreau is you don't have to go live on a pond. It's always an ever-present ability to go be tranquil, serene. But what is serenity? Serenity is clarity and understanding of who you are and accepting who you are. And not being when people want to brag about who they're arguing with, I think you're in a battle where there is no winning. There's no winning. You're never going to change another person. We can change our pants. We can change our clothes. We don't change people. This is what the statement that everybody wants to grab onto, which is not really, it's just the why he went to the woods. And it's not what he did or where he went to or where and what for, right? It was why. And they want to know why, but they're not going to go do it, right? I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life and see if I could learn what it had to teach, and not. When I came to die, I discovered that I had not lived. I did not wish to live what was not life. He wanted to go live life as he dreamed it, not as he was told to live it. What are the essential facts of life? I avoid people. I avoid talking. I hide from my fellow man because they have their eyes closed. I do. I cannot be around people because the minute you say a truthful comment, they want to act like you have no right to say that comment. I have the truth that I say, and I have the right to say it, as he or she or thee or they have the right to say whatever they believe. It is not my responsibility to change them. And this is the essential part. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage. I can never change other people. Therefore, all I can be is an example. And that's what Henry David Thoreau was. He went to the woods to be an example. A philosopher is not meant to live. Socrates drank the hemlock, an act of civil disobedience. They killed Jesus Christ. Anybody that tells the truth, Winston Churchill again was saying, I always talk about it. I need a higher class of enemies. Anybody without an enemy is obviously not telling the truth. If you want to separate a person that is honest from dishonest, an honest person that talks the truth is going to have enemies. Can't help it. People do not want to hear. They want to live in a denial. They want to have justification. They want to substantiate their lies. They don't want heaven on earth. They want hell on earth, and they want to say it's okay. To them, the only reason to believe in God is so that they can go to heaven, and they want to, on earth, they want to be living the saint. They're pretty much, the whole world, in my opinion, is a practicing atheist. They only, in words, are noble. They will not walk away from the things of man. They want to be judged and live with man. They don't want to be a tribe of one. The kingdom of heaven can exist on earth. It's real easy. You just got to go alone and be on your own. If you have to get somebody to say it's okay, you're a prisoner to that person. If you have to have the preacher, the priest, the person say that you're living a holy life, then you're not living your own life. Thoreau went to the woods to be a tribe of one, not to be alone, not to be sad, not to say goodbye, but because he was a 1 in 100 million person. And anybody can be that 1 in 100 million person. That doesn't mean you have to have these, noble thoughts, these things. You just have to walk away from the influence. Anybody that you get angry with normally is an influence. That means that, in a way, if you're getting angry at them on a regular basis, you should erase them. I talk about it all the time. I do not feel the least bit desire to change a person. I have people that say, Andy, you need to sit there and fight it out. I go, why? That's under the misunderstood belief that I can change somebody. Only an idiot sits around and talks to an idiot. Only a fool sits around and talks to a fool. And that's what most people want to be. They want to be a fool. But not really. What they want to do is push somebody down so they can push themselves up. What is empathy? And this is where I think so few people can understand Thoreau. Thoreau went and lived outside the influence of society. And until you do that, you don't know the freedom that you would have if you stepped outside of society. Some people say, I went on a vacation for 3 weeks. When you go to another country and you live 3 months outside the influence, what you're going to do is probably go in and cuddle up with a bunch of other people. People want to go where there's a bunch of other men. They want to go. Everybody wants to join the club. Empathy, though, can only be achieved by actually trying to walk in the steps of another person. Few of these professors can do anything more than talk about what somebody else said. They're not going to go live the life. It's amazing how many people want to be famous by talking about what another person did instead of being the hero of their own life. Charles Dickens said, whether I shall be the hero of my life or that station held by anyone else, these pages will tell. The first line of Charles Dickens, and then one of my favorite quotes of all time. Okay, I'll read one more quote from Henry David Thoreau, but I wrote this chapter, and it's going to be in my book about Andy Lee Graham, a tribe of one. Okay, anybody that believes in the value of my word, please become a Patreon. Life is good. I'm here and you're not. Why not? Andy Lee Graham. Hit the subscribe button. Yeah, I'm in the middle of chaos, and I should enjoy the chaos, and I should admire the chaos, and I should embrace the chaos, because that is life. It's not a problem. It's just normal. When somebody interrupts your world, when they make too much noise, it's not a problem. It's life. A German girl, Sophie,